Kazakhstan, a global leader in uranium production with abundant mineral wealth, is actively pursuing its vision as a key supplier of critical minerals for electric vehicles and other green energy technologies. Despite its potential, the mining sector faces regulatory hurdles that have stifled investment. Recent consultations revealed challenges such as complex mineral access regulations, lack of automation in government services, and inconsistencies between mining laws and other legislation, including tax, water, land, and environment. Recognizing the need for improvement, the government is implementing significant reforms. These include proposed changes to the tax code, focusing on incentivizing geological exploration, reducing the mineral extraction tax burden, and encouraging mineral processing. A key change is the planned shift to a royalty system, a major step in re-regulating the mining industry. Kazakhstan is actively seeking collaboration with international companies, recognizing their essential role in unlocking the country's mineral potential. Foreign expertise and capital are key to attracting investment and fostering a stable and predictable environment. For international investors, staying informed about these evolving regulations is crucial. Kazakhstan's mining landscape is changing rapidly, presenting both challenges and opportunities for players willing to adapt and navigate this dynamic environment.
Добрый день, уважаемые делегаты форума.
Good day, dear delegates of the forum. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of MINEX Kazakhstan for such an informative agenda program, and I would like to congratulate you on this anniversary, 15 years. You know, when the forum is coming to an end, for example, last year when it was the 14th forum, the end of it, and during the whole year, Artur Polyakov and his team, they, over this whole year, they are trying to be prepared for the next forum. So they're discussing different issues, the changes of regulation, and we see that the efforts of all these years' work is the programs that we have now. So this program, this agenda is very important, and I think that the content of the program is becoming better each year. So the first session is dedicated to investment climate in mining industry, and I suggest our speakers to work the following way. So each speaker has about 10 minutes for his or her presentation, and then we will have Q&A session at the end. I will have my presentation first, and in my presentation I will give a brief overview on what is happening in the industry. In these are the observations, what has happening over this year. First of all, let me talk about the favorable conditions of investment climate. You know, when we participate in different global conferences, for example, PDC, Mines and Mining, not many countries from this part of the world can boast about their legislation, but Kazakhstan has implemented this, let's say, very progressive legislation, and so I think that these fully implemented rules for licensing of subsoil use is a very big reform, and it has been already for 10 years. So here we see people who have implemented these updates to regulatory documents, and as a result we now see what we have. Electronic service, Minerals Gov.kz, Mr. Artur mentioned in his speech, we see that this system is being implemented, and I think that next year we will see better results, more objective results that would be more clear for the society. We see that new territories are opening, and the state the state acts in advance and opened some territory that later were limited for subsoil operations. On one hand, it gives us a bit of risk sense. However, on the other hand, we see that the government planned to do this reform as fast as it is possible, and so they give these territories under the first application principles. And of course, the access to historical data is provided to a certain level, but at the same time, we still have questions. And my task is to cover the issues that are most important for the investment client. First of all, and the most important, of course, is the stability of subsoil use conditions. And here the main question is about experience. What experience should Kazakhstan take? And in my opinion, there are two ways. For example, we could take the experience of Canada, Australia, or Chile, or the second option is Mongolia or Indonesia, because all of them have their own task to provide deep processing and to ensure the implementation of state interests, own interest. However, these countries implemented their approaches in different ways, and I will talk about it a bit later. The second question is that industrial policy is becoming part of the regulatory regime in the field of subsoil use. It's a non-standard situation. Investors that we talk to, they see that exploration and processing, they sometimes consider all of it together, but these are different topics. And first of all, when investors come and they search for the deposits, so they have one idea. However, if we tell our investors, okay, first you do this, then you need to provide deep processing and so on, then of course this seems as additional barriers for investors to make a decision to come to Kazakhstan. The effect of switching from mineral extraction tax to royalties, it's also an important issue, and maybe the measures that Kazakhstan implemented regarding export licensing is in one way, but if we study the experience of Canada or Australia on royalty, maybe we will minimize the rates and it will intensify the deep processing. Maybe some of the measures will be eliminated. Then we also see the potential threats to the exclusive right. It's Article 257. For example, the investors comes and we tell them that you will develop, we will give you the right, and we give the license, but then it was this exclusive right. If we speak about potential threats, this could be one of the threats to all further investments. This is all about stability. So you see the retrospective picture. In 1990s, it was stability, absolute stability, and investors was guaranteed that changes will not affect them. For example, the investor came in 1990, and if there are some changes in 1994, the legislation for him was stabilized, and it was a tax stability. But then the tax stability was eliminated, then the stability of law was eliminated, and many countries did it at that time. But for us, it is important for the moment to have this political stability and to have no changes in the major picture for the investors. As for the experience, here we see that in Mongolia it was a boom in 2000s, in the year 2000s. In 2006, they presented excess profit tax. It was 68%, but then it was a requirement for state share in strategic deposits introduced in 2006 as well. And as a result, they saw the significant outflows of investment. Of course, later they changed their approach. However, they had already a big effect. So what Mongolia does now, I mean, they cannot restore the situation because now they need to, let's say, earn the trust from investors again. You know, we see that sometimes deputies in the parliament, they speak about significant changes in the subsoil use, but let us study the experience of other countries. For example, this Mongolian example, it's like the countries with which we have some similarities. So we have to study their experience and to look at how it affected their investments. A very interesting experience is from Indonesia. They banned the export and they freezed some of their investment project for many years. I think studying this experience would also help Kazakhstan. Maybe we shall not decline some of the initiative, but we need to study experience so that to have a balance. However, at the same time, we see the experience of successful jurisdiction. For example, the Chile in 2023, they changed their tax for production. Botswana, Western Australia, these are very good examples that have to be studied as well.
And the issues that we are actively working on is the subsoil use as well as the land issues. Those are the questions and issues that we are trying to address regarding the subsoil use for the companies who are dealing with extractives as well as subsoil users. And of course, when we talk about hundreds of blocks for the investors, these are the issues that are full of nuances because license for the exploration, you need to have a license, but then it will take some 6 months of time. And it's one of the issues. Maybe it could be changed on the level of the legislation to the rounds, for example, because there are rounds and rounds and rounds. But that's all we can try to address those issues. I want to give a floor to Mr. Rostovtsev, Republican Association of Metallurgy, Republic Association of Mining and Metallurgy Enterprises. He's the chairman of this association. He knows how to represent their voices. Hi, colleagues. I'm very happy to see you. If you could see in corridors, there are many, many people who are talking to each other, and this is quite a good event to deal with networking. And we know that government had adopted a new policy in order to attract new enterprises and companies to the center. 3,000 licenses have been already issued, and we are awaiting. And we are thinking that we are going to have new reforms, and we know that our association, we call it GameCa. This association is the one that combines more than 100 enterprises, and now we are working with Ministry of Industry. We activate the interaction in regards to making amendments into the code on subsoil use. You know that in 2019 the reform had started. The association Kriska had been found, and new approaches on licensing had been established, and maybe from contracts to the licensing shift will be implemented, but partially there hadn't been implemented. As you can see, when President says that we need to continue reforms, we need to seriously deal with the reforms until full-fledged state of affairs. So what does it mean? Now we have the representatives of association. Mr. Zakiriana, for example, is one of the first ones. There are 60 amendments that we are initiating right now, and maybe we will even pose a question regarding to split subsoil use code split into two. One is going to be for the soil solid extractives like in other countries, because if you try to compose articles in a way that they will be addressed to both liquid and solid extractives, there will be some of the discrepancies in interpretation. So that is why it is really important to change this situation. We support government that is proceeding to work on the explorations, state of affairs being changed. We also support the identified agreements to be signed. Also, refinery processes being changed. All of these amendments had been submitted to Parliament. Well, of course, we understand that all of the changes in the tax code will also allow us to reform the system as well. It is really important that we had agreed with government to implement royalties, because royalties and the rates shall be worked now, because we would like to all of you to help us out. What are the rates? What quotes we are going to use as a reference? We know that most going to look at the active deposits. If we won't work on that, it'll be the same like with the licensing, because many companies didn't know. Shall we go to for the licensing or for the agreements? We wanted to have the royalties that would allow to bring this sector to the level that we would like to see and will be aligned with international standards. So in this regards, we have understanding with the government. So where are we exactly lagging behind? We need to make amendments to the code on the land and water code, for example, because some of the norms doesn't give opportunity to work on the new deposits. So we would like to make public the discussions on the code and legal framework. We had agreed that we will start working nearest weeks, and we're going to implement all of the amendments in 2025, September 2025. We want to activate investment activity to the country. So I would like to address to all of you, yes, we always have opinion amongst us that maybe something shall be saved. Maybe we shall not extract all the minerals and fossils. Maybe we shall save some, but we see that technologies are changing in the whole world. Aluminium, for example, oil, steel is in a very high demand. The rare earth minerals, for example, also in a high demand. Coal industry, for example, needs some new impetus, and because we understand that coal burning shall be terminated, but situation is changing. Coal is very, very important product. We need real actions, real propositions, and here we are looking at the stimulus impetus to the cluster initiative. So that is why in our sector we have activated a work on creation of the clusters with the domestic goods production and manufacturing. Aluminium cluster, for example, had been created. President and Prime Minister support these cluster initiatives, and they're going to create refinery processes and creating new products.
And in conclusion, I would like to say that yes, we do have the optimistic view, and we hope that MINEX as a platform where we not only share our opinion but also argue, discuss the issues, we find each other, we make some contractual relations, and I hope that it will help us to come to the second stage of reforming the legislation on subsoil use. We kindly ask everybody to raise this issue. We see the interests from many companies, and if there is something that prevents you from coming to Kazakhstan, for example, you want to come, you want to invest, tell us about it. Let us help you with it. We can create the working schedule with the government to solve the issues. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ruslan Norashevich, who is the president of Chamber of Mines. This is the new organization, but this association presents foreign investors, and due to the experience of Mr. Ruslan, he can present the interest of investors, and he has general experience. Good morning, dear ladies and gentlemen. I am glad to greet all of you at this traditional MINEX forum. 15 years of growth and partnership, and each year this platform is expanding. We see new faces, and for the country this is a great advantage. Before moving to the topic of my report, I would like to say that our Chamber of Mines is a young one. We have been operating only 2 years, but our mission is to develop the mining sector and to improve the investment climate and to eliminate some, let's say, negative challenges or issues. And let me say, in Kazakhstan, as in many other countries, the political vision of the country's leadership impact the industry. Here you can see the slide with quotes of our president that he says each year. And in his quotes, in his words, he says that the leadership is interested in investment, and the country's leadership highly assess those investors that come now, and favorable business environment gives its result. And if we look at the date 28th of January 2025, here again the president in his words focused on the reform in subsoil use, that this reform shall be continued and shall be developed in the same way as it started. Speaking about continuation of this development, and I want to say that the previous speaker, Almat, he told about his vision, and actually I would agree that everything in our country shall be developed in, shall go through different evolution stages. For example, in 1992, Kazakhstan was a young country, and our task was to present this private subsoil use in the country. Then in 1996, it was already the demand to distribute those fields that were explored by Soviet geologists. Here I'm speaking about the solid mineral deposits and about oil fields. So here we speak about attraction of investors to the country. After that, in 2010, our task was to form the sustainable system of state regulation and management. And at that period of time, it was important to build the just social load with enterprises, because investors received, let's say, ready-made, without any risks, deposits, and of course the income shall be distributed in a justful way. So at that time, we saw the strong control from the state part, and at that time we had a big Ministry of Natural Resources with lots of staff, lots of different analytical centers and quasi-state companies that were working in this area. However, we had to admit that at that period of time there were already talks that in Kazakhstan we need to have the reform on reducing the number of staff and so on. So that's why, but at that period of time, all these deposits have already been distributed. So we needed to give an impulse to geological exploration so that investor would come and open new spaces. And then at that time, based on the global practices, the decision was made to attract investors, and the specific code on subsoil and subsoil use was adopted. It was a good one, and we know that top mining companies that invest in geological exploration now, and they are, by the way, the members of our chamber, they have the prospects and good perspective for the years ahead. Right now, they do not earn, but they attract the capital from different countries so that to open here in Kazakhstan new fields. And why we need to continue this reform, why our president's focuses on this. You know, there is a good proverb: if you are riding a bike, you shall never stop, otherwise you will fall down. So never stop. So that's why, as I have already mentioned, right now our chamber has about 50 large companies. They are all here, and we, as a Chamber of Mines, bring to the government and bring to the competent authority all the best things, practices, and we justify all the changes, all the updates that shall be made. This dialogue between our chamber and between the government and competent authority has been created, and it is working. For example, last year, Venga Mine came as a member, and they start to explore the large territories of Kazakhstan. The other example, one of the members of our chamber, also a large company, they came to Kazakhstan and they received more than 15,000 square kilometers of licensed territory for geological exploration. It's a potential territory with high potential to discover new sites, and this territory was not explored by Soviet geologists. After 2.5 years, the company did exploration, and these territories were returned to the state because now the technology doesn't allow to do the exploration. But what I'm saying, the investor came and took the responsibility to study this territory authority and then gave it back to the state. So we see that this was a huge work, and this data about the territory will be available for the future. But to have these processes continued, we need to present to satisfy the expectations of investors. First of all, we speak about stability of industrial legislation. We speak about access to geological information and digital database, automation of relations with state authority, clear tax policy, balance of interests during implementation of some other related legislation, for example, legislation on water resources, on land, and so on. And of course, we need to support the implementation of geological projects at places, because from at the high stages there are good high words. However, when you come to the site, to the local authority, the situation is slightly different. In reality, what we see the growth of investment, attractiveness of Kazakhstan. We see the increase of geological study in Kazakhstan. It's good. We see the development of market of services in geological exploration, stimulation of internal processing and development of intra-country value. We need to develop this internal processing. However, there are some challenges. For example, as for the disadvantages, we still see the lack of stability of conceptual principles. All last year we were speaking in Majlis. Before in Majlis we had only one geologist and Ms. Baimuhanova. But now what we see different deputies present different opinions, and it makes a turbulence. The inconsistency of initiatives of the government and Majlis provides us unstable situation. Some people say let's go to the situation of 1996, but we understand it is impossible. We do not have so much people. Then the delays in the reform of tax legislation. For 2 times it is already being delayed. There is royalties, there is a conceptual solution, but we want to see the text. We want to see this in the draft of tax code. A lack of national database and free access to geological information. The Geological Service promised us to open the access to this database in July, but we do not see it now. Problems in automated interaction with the competent authority. Yes, we see some changes, we see the dialogue, we see large investors, but for half a year they cannot receive licenses because there is no automation or some challenges with apostille processes. So we need to do something. There are also some other problems. For example, companies that apply for licenses, they don't see with whom they are going to compete at the auction. According to the code, this data shall be available, but companies do not see. It's some kind of secrecy. We speak about general transparency, however, we see some hidden areas. And, of course, inconsistency in the implementation of projects at the central and local levels. So, challenges or our plans. We need to understand what we need to do further. We need to continue to do the reform, but what exactly shall we do? Well, first of all, here we need to enshrine the principles of stability and consistency of industry legislation. We need to have the set of amendments. We need to speak about enshrining all these principles not only in the main code but also in some related legislation. We need to implement this hearing state, listening state concept. We have the memorandum signed with General Prosecutor's Office. They help us to resolve the private issues of our investors. However, unfortunately, in Kazakhstan, we have this practice when investor has the issues, everybody thinks that we shall go to the president to resolve these issues. Well, unfortunately, my time is over, and thank you so much for your attention. I will be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ruslan. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Viktor Kovalenko, who is the Regional Director on Services in Climate Change and Sustainable Development in Central Asia, Ernst & Young. Thank you so much. I'll try to be brief and to focus your attention at one specific moment, which is really important, and I hope that we will discuss this issue in further sessions today and tomorrow. We all now observe that there is a hype around critical minerals topic, rare earths and some other metals that are critical for modern technology. In Kazakhstan, almost each week, each month, we can read the news that something was found, was explored, something was opened there. We will now start selling and we will put all these products to the market. Well, actually, this is cool. This is all cool, but there is a problem here, one problem. We are unfortunately not the only country who can suggest these resources, who can provide these resources to other countries. It's important not only to find these elements, these minerals, it's not only important to have the very good legislation, we need to take them out, to extract, to sell. And where we see the consumption of these elements, where we see the demand for these critical minerals, there are some specific rules and we have to take them into consideration. So the message that I would like to give in my presentation and my speech is the following. Right now, those people who are going to extract those resources and supply those resources to the global market, you have to think about the following. We speak here about traceability of critical minerals, where they were extracted, how it was extracted. We need to take into account the footprint of these metals, and we see that there are different initiatives all over the world that set some specific requirements. For example, let's take London Metal Exchange. They have some requirements with regard to ESG passport or metal sustainability passport. Right now, with European Union, we intensify our relations with regard to critical minerals. Some documents have been sent, and EU has so-called EU Critical Minerals Act, within which this implies the use of sustainability passport, which includes some specific metrics, and European Union will focus on some metrics in this passport, and everybody shall to comply with requirements. If we are not going to do it, I mean, if we just explore, extract, and sell, of course, if we are not going to do it, but other countries who have the same metals will do it, the European Union will buy from them. So today I'm going to talk about some ideas. Besides presenting the data on the footprint of these critical minerals, we need to have the specific database or the platform, and we need to take into account this fact in our regulatory area, and our exploration and processing companies shall also take this into account. I will give you the example of one of the initiatives and some of the metrics so that companies could orient themselves what have to be taken into account with regard to such passports. There are some companies that explore and supply some green metals, for example, green copper, green molybdenum, green zinc, green steel. This agenda becomes trendy now, but actually there are some simple steps. First of all, we ask about the carbon footprint, water footprint of this metal, where this metal was extracted, so that we would be able to trace all the life cycle of this metal. Of course, the social aspects shall be taken into account. I mean, when this metal was processed, extracted, and so on. So the accumulation of all this data is so-called ESG passport, and there should be the specific digital platform where all this information would be collected. The task of this idea is the following. In Central Asia, in Kazakhstan, we need to create, in Kazakhstan, we shall create the Central Asian hub on such critical minerals. And of course, the emergence of a platform with the accumulation of this data could be the objective task for Kazakhstan. Why not Kazakhstan take initiatives in here? Maybe in the licensing agreement there could be some obligations for the companies to form this data at the stage of the preparatory, at the stage of the preparation of the field, because then the company will be easier to have all this data. So from the very beginning of the preparatory stage, the company shall accumulate all this data so that later present it in such ESG passport. There are different systems, for example, Platts system, where you could see the difference between quotes of green metal and usual metal. And there are some cases where there could be a high difference. Why? In the beginning of my presentation, I said that ESG passport is a tool. It's a tool for marketing of green metals. It's not only enough to extract it, to take it and to give it. We need to do it as it is acceptable in, for example, European Union, because we are planning to set our relations with them in these critical minerals. And getting back to the following issue, it's not enough just to accumulate this data, to count them, and to give the metal buyers such information in the form of a passport. It is also important to have such platform where all this data would be accumulated, and so that buyers and users of this data would use it to comply with their own requirements. Maybe together with the European Union we could create such platform here, or maybe not here. It's the other issue. The other important aspect that I would like to tell you is the following. At one stage, it might seem to us that this is an additional compliance burden. It is important for us to focus on finding metal, process it, sell it. However, without such compliance burden, we could lose the future advantage if we compare our country with the other country or with other seller of the same metal that complies with all the requirements. And if there are, and of course there are some compliance requirements from European Union, and of course the European Union will choose between us and the other seller who complies with the requirements.
Yes, of course, there's a hype, and of course, there's a demand for the critical minerals and rare earth minerals. Kazakhstan is indeed one of the countries who successfully could be linked into this supply chain. And of course, we need to take into consideration things like marketing, positioning that shall be adopted at the points that and enterprises where the main buyers will be in, and Minerals Act shall be also something that we need to think about. Thank you so much for your attention. Victor, thank you so much. One of the significant partners in our sector is AIFC, and we know that all the financial investments and other investments could be supported as well. And I'm happy that we have Department on Mining that is under Ainur Kaparova, and she's going to elaborate on how to work with AIFC in mining.
I was actually asked to present in English, so I will go ahead and do that. I'm Ainur. I'm the head of the new project management office at the Astana International Financial Center that focuses on facilitation of financing into the mining sector of Kazakhstan. Let me give you a brief overview about what AIFC is. So AIFC is a financial center that was modeled after the likes of DIFC in Dubai and AEDGM in Abu Dhabi. We are an independent jurisdiction within Kazakhstan that operates on the system of British common law, which is distinct from the legal system of Kazakhstan. The center has been created in 2018, and today we have more than 3,700 companies registered at AIFC, of which about 1,200 are various financial and professional service providers who are licensed by AIFC's independent regulator called AFSA. Also, AIFC is home to one of the two stock exchanges in Kazakhstan called the Astana International Exchange. The Astana International Exchange has about 65 trading members today. In 2024, the trading turnover was more than 1.3 billion USD and is currently home to such famous mining companies like Solidcore. The language of business at AIFC is English, and we can boast that the corporate legal framework and contract regulations that our participants can use. They are most closely modeled towards international standards, and foreign investors, foreign companies who register with us, they like that a lot. In addition, there are certain tax incentives for companies registered with us. So everybody gets levy of dividends tax and capital gains tax. And for companies who are licensed by our regulator, mostly financial services providers, they get a levy of corporate income tax and value-added tax on top. Now, if we talk about mining financing at AIFC, let me tell you about how I came to this. So before this role, I used to be the head of a department that works with all international financial services companies and international investors. And what I could tell for sure is that every third company that comes, or maybe even every second company that comes, they are all looking for local Kazakhstan mining projects, and they ask us to help us find them. On the other hand, from my local network, I know that a lot of local companies are looking for financing, and somehow these two parties, they can't find each other. So what we have done is we have developed a framework that can encompass the entire mining cycle from early exploration to production, and we have found and identified financial instruments that can be tailored for each stage of that mining cycle. Actually, let me switch to Russian now.
On the basis of the AIFC, using the regulatory norms and internationally acknowledged regulations that we have, we can conduct and use many different financial instruments. We think that for each of the stage of the exploration and extraction, there shall be financial instrument, and that will help to develop financing and attraction of the finances to the sector. On the early stage of the exploration, we understand that this is the most difficult stage, and colleagues have said already and elaborated on the stage as the most needed in financing stage. If we look at the international experience, we know that on early stages, most of the times is either private or public financing in Saudi Arabia, for example. They have created a fund that finances the geological explorations. I don't know how is it happening in Kazakhstan. I don't know whether we have plans to do the same as Saudi Arabia, but I know that we are creating more and more private funds that would like to enter at early stage and maybe exit till extraction itself and mining itself. Well, one of the funds is in the process under the process of the registration in IFC. They already have the equity. They are registering. They are going to receive license, collective investment scheme. They love the platform that I represent because this fund helps out. Our regulations help to register this fund according to the structure, which is clear and comprehensible for the international investors. I also would like to use this opportunity and tell you that I am planning to make pilot project. We would like to launch incubator or accelerator for mining and extraction sector, where we might have juniors who are trying to find financing and different strategical and financial investors who are in a search of the projects, and we can marry them on basis of our platform. We also have rich ecosystem of different consulting, legal, technical companies that can help out to juniors to package their services in a way that to be nearer to the standards of investment attractiveness attractive for international players. And we're working on the details and the mechanisms of incubator, as we call it. Well, on the later stages of the exploration, it's easier to attract investments. On the stage of the exploration where you can receive JORC, for example, KZRC or Canadian equivalent. Despite the instruments that I have mentioned, you can also use the AFSA IPO for juniors. And on this stage, you'll need JORC report or equivalent of it. I understand that not all juniors will come to the stage, and we think that incubator that we would like to launch, it will help out in this regard. Well, we also had negotiations with leading exchanges as Toronto, for example, that had acknowledged and approved our appetite, that will give us opportunity to exit two different stock exchanges, and we already had streaming royalty companies that provide financing on the stage of the exploration and offtake metals, future offtake metals, and they also are interested in Kazakhstani projects, and they like regulatory and contract rights that you can conclude on the basis of the AFC. Well, on the later stages, of course, the spectrum of the financial instruments are expanded because aforementioned is added by bonds, for example, issuance, and you could also attract the credit lines or credit products from traditional banks, and we also have quite a good stream of the investors. They would like to work with us. They would like to register on our platform, and we think and we want to help the mining and extracting sector of Kazakhstan. Thank you for your attention. Thank you so much. We have 15 minutes for Q&A session, and we will wait questions from audience. But first, I would like to address my first question. Dmitry had already elaborated on his review that Kazakhstan has quite a room for the offside in investments. If we will, for example, compare with Chile or Indonesia, there are there is a room for improvement. And you had already said that you worked with the lower chamber of the parliament, and I think that the intentions of our policymakers are good. Their heart's in a good place, let's say, because they would like to protect the interests of our citizens. They would like to also support industrialization, of course, but we also looked at the retrospectives, for example, and we know that entrepreneurship for incentives, for example, in Indonesia and taxation had been implemented. In Mongolia, for example, it is not a problem, but these trends started from the parliament and from the policymakers. How do you think, as a person who has experience and had coordinated the beginning of these reforms, how to structure a dialogue so that to not make the mistakes that other countries have made, or eliminate those mistakes? Thank you so much, Almat, for your question. This is really relevant issue, to be really honest. Well, those initiatives were full of different initiatives, but nowadays in Majlis, more than 7 bills actually touch upon sector companies, and we need to acknowledge that, yes, in the beginning it was a shock when policymakers that had been elected by citizens made reforms that shocked us, but they wanted to strengthen the laws, and I understand that there were different incidents, and we started discussing it in frames of the working group, and no one wanted to nowadays to deal with it, but constructive dialogue could be done when we have specialists who had worked in a sector and the situation is a rather objective one. We can accept it. Yesterday we had a meeting of the working group and we are reaching consensus, I shall say. There are some moments, of course, that is related to the strengthening the control over this sector, but initiatives on the level of the exploration is gone, because we explained that one person is right now investing their own money. It is not something that we shall do. Well, this dialogue had been structured very well, and the level of the competences of our colleagues had been expanded, and everyone understands very well that targeting to the investment favorability as well as attractiveness will remain. So I think everything's going to be good in this regard. I also have another question, using opportunity as the moderator. May I ask you to not abuse your rights of the moderator? I'll ask, we're waiting, we want to ask questions. But I would like to ask a question. So how do you think, compared to other countries, regarding Kazakhstan, our president had elaborated on the AI as the priority for development, so taking into consideration the mining, what Kazakhstan could do in this regard? Is there any new opportunities for development? Thank you, Ahmad, for your question. Well, if we look at involvement, for example, first we will elaborate on the geological exploration, what it is needed for the juniors and majors, and what do they need? They need a list of the prospective targets and segments for further exploration, and AI can help out to identify those things. And of course, in order to do that, we need database, very good, high quality database with good resolution so that we could launch algorithm based on this. But I know that you are digitalizing and most of the data, maybe intensification might be done of this data, but because countries sometimes use even more money of their equity, and scaling up to whole country is quite a difficult one. And France, for example, the Saudi Arabia, Australia, Canada, they spend hundreds and hundreds of millions in order to explore their own lands that are allocated from their government budget. So here we need to have a bridge geological competences and competences of AI, because we need to have geologists who are modern ones, let's say, that doesn't work with inheritance and traditionally and with papers, but those who are trained from technological point of view. Maybe the partnerships here would be very, very useful. Thank you. Audience, please. Yulia Mitrofanskaya, Aral Resources. I would like to ask Mr. Baimashев. Dear Ruslan, I really liked your presentation. You are enthusiast. My question is, you have cited President of Republic of Kazakhstan in 2025, February. He had elaborated that reforms on the legislation shall be continued. What he meant, what reforms were going to reform? Thank you so much for your question. Well, I feel like I'm a school pupil, to be really honest. When teacher asks, I have already elaborated that the position of administration of the president is based on provision of the attraction and an improvement of the investment climate, not worsening it, is the most important thing. And President gives clear instructions in order to improve investment environment being improved. And since the subsoil use code had been adopted, we see this vector. But what exactly the legislations will be touched and will be amended, we are still discussing. I think that the general package of the amendments or correction of the codes will be in place. Thank you. We have one more question.
Good day, dear participants. My name is Professor Kozhan Kmita, Angstrom Company. I guess I have a question to all speakers. Maybe the moderator will distribute my question. Maybe everybody except Ainur. So today, lots of important aspects have been said, and everything was connected with the problems of tax legislation reform. I want to understand your position with regard to alignment of issues on the development of mining sector in the context of harmonization of all legislative amendments and with regard to environmental code. This winter and this spring we were witnessing that all our large domestic holdings, they are changing, let's say, their activity, and they include into their processing technogen wastes and some other elements. So I want to congratulate, first of all, our colleagues with the Day of Geology. Somebody said that it was opened, something was opened, some deposits, so fields were opened, but nobody knows what is it, what was opened. So our colleagues from Ernst & Young was right there. So my question is the following. Do we have enough expertise at the government level, at Majalis? Sooner or later, the secondary resources, I mean the technogen wastes, will be the main source for maintaining the production of the enterprises in mining complex. We cannot, let's say, we cannot take into account, because the enterprises, the large enterprises, they have lots of people working at such enterprises. So we need to ensure the continuous operation. And nowadays, the situation is the following. I mean, I am from the scientific sphere. I am a scientist and researcher. And you know, the methodologies that we have now and that now the ministry is using for mineral resources will not be applicable for such technogen wastes. So enterprises will face lots of challenges. So maybe you started from Ruslan. What can you say, please? Could you please answer? Will it be important for us to take into account this environmental aspect? Because in the environmental code we see... Thank you for the question. Yes, I'm sorry for interrupting, but we do not have enough time, so please, Mr. Ruslan, could you answer? Thank you. I will split your question. So the environmental aspects after the adoption of the new environmental code became extremely important because to move to new standards and to new forms, it's not an easy task for all the enterprises. But as for such technogenic, let's say, waste, I think that they shall be recycled. And now we are discussing that this recycle shall be with a rate 0 or 0.1. However, if we ask about my personal opinion is the following. The implementation of royalties from the sales will be better, will be more just. There are 5,000 passports, and from some of them you cannot receive anything, and some of them with a high profit. So I think that we need to have this just taxation for everyone. So one more question, please. We have time for the other question. If there are no questions, so let me give my idea on the previous question. You know, the new tax code provides a coefficient which is 10 times less, but if we speak about IRR 10%, then there are some specific metrics. For example, we have 7.5 as a mineral extraction tax. So I think all these things that are government is doing now, all of these efforts are for stimulating of mining sector. Well, with this, I suggest us to close our session to finish the work, and now we do have coffee break. Sorry, one more question.
Why can't Kazakhstan government open geological reports in a open source in English translation. It is available for the other countries so that they can be benefited out of it. Because most of the literature in Kazakhstan, as you rightly mentioned, it is in Russian language. So if you translate and make it open without cost, so that it will attract more and more investors from outside.
Спасибо, спасибо.
Thank you.
Kazakhstan, a global leader in uranium production with abundant mineral wealth, is actively pursuing its vision as a key supplier of critical minerals for electric vehicles and other green energy technologies. Despite its potential, the mining sector faces regulatory hurdles that have stifled investment. Recent consultations revealed challenges such as complex mineral access regulations, lack of automation in government services, and inconsistencies between mining laws and other legislation, including tax, water, land, and environment. Recognizing the need for improvement, the government is implementing significant reforms. These include proposed changes to the tax code, focusing on incentivizing geological exploration, reducing the mineral extraction tax burden, and encouraging mineral processing. A key change is the planned shift to a royalty system, a major step in re-regulating the mining industry. Kazakhstan is actively seeking collaboration with international companies, recognizing their essential role in unlocking the country's mineral potential. Foreign expertise and capital are key to attracting investment and fostering a stable and predictable environment. For international investors, staying informed about these evolving regulations is crucial. Kazakhstan's mining landscape is changing rapidly, presenting both challenges and opportunities for players willing to adapt and navigate this dynamic environment.